You know how some people just walk into your life at the perfect moment, almost like they were meant to save you? That's exactly how it felt when I met Emily. I was at rock bottom, fired from a job I thought I'd never lose, my bank account barely hanging on, and my confidence somewhere under my shoes. I wasn't looking for love. Heck, I wasn't even looking for company. But there she was, like a bright, warm light cutting through the mess I called my life. We met at a coffee shop I frequented after job interviews. I remember sitting there, staring blankly at my phone, refreshing my email for the 100th time, praying for a callback. Emily bumped into me, literally. She spilled half her latte on my lap, and then looked at me with those big green eyes that almost made me forget I was wearing coffee. She laughed nervously, apologized, and offered to buy me another drink. We started talking, and for the first time in weeks, I felt human. She had this energy, this charm that made me forget my problems, if only for a moment. By the end of that conversation, I'd given her my number. Emily wasn't like anyone I'd met before. At least, that's what I thought. She was ambitious, always talking about dreams of traveling the world, building a life filled with adventure. I admired that, even though I was barely keeping my own life together. When she said she liked that I was different from all the guys who only cared about money and status, I felt special. It was a relief to hear someone say they didn't care that I wasn't on top of my game. I believed her. We started seeing each other almost every day. Emily had this way of making me feel like I was the luckiest guy alive. She'd text me little good morning notes, bring me my favorite snacks, and even motivate me to keep applying for jobs. It felt real, like she truly wanted me to succeed. I started falling for her hard. I thought she was the one person who saw the real me. But the thing about falling too fast? You often miss the red flags. And looking back, there were plenty. At first, I brushed it off when she asked me for small favors. Picking her up from work late at night, covering her Uber when her app wasn't working, or lending her $50 because she forgot her wallet. It didn't seem like a big deal. I mean, what's $50 when you're with someone who makes you feel like you're worth $1 million? But soon, these small favors turned into bigger ones. Suddenly, I was paying for dinners, weekend getaways, and random emergencies she always seemed to have. There was one moment that still sticks with me. I was behind on my rent, barely scraping by, when Emily called me in tears. Her car had broken down, and she needed $200 to fix it immediately. Without thinking twice, I sent her the money, even though I had no idea how I'd pay my bills that month. She thanked me, said I was her hero, and I believed it. What I didn't realize was that Emily's world revolved around what people could do for her, not who they were. I didn't see it then, but I was just one of many stepping stones she used to climb higher. The first crack appeared when I noticed she rarely asked how I was doing. Conversations were always about her job, her problems, her dreams. I'd listen, eager to help, but when I'd bring up my own struggles, she'd brush them off or change the subject. It was subtle at first, but the more I thought about it, the clearer it became. I was there to serve her needs, not the other way around. The second red flag came one Friday night. We had plans to watch a movie at my place, but she canceled last minute, saying her friend had a girls' night emergency. Something in her tone felt off. Later, when she posted a photo on Instagram, dressed up, holding a cocktail, and tagging a guy I didn't know, I felt my stomach twist. I told myself not to overthink it. Maybe it was just a friend. Maybe I was insecure. But deep down, a voice I couldn't ignore whispered, "Something's wrong here." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying every moment we'd shared, looking for signs I might have missed. Was she really into me? Or was I just a convenient option? It was around 2 a.m. when I decided to test something. I sent her a simple text. "Hey, hope you're having fun. Want to grab breakfast tomorrow?" She didn't respond. Not that night, not the next morning. When she finally texted me around 11 a.m., it was just, "Sorry, babe, I was so tired. Maybe next time." That's when the first seed of doubt really planted itself in my mind. I didn't know it then, but this was just the beginning. The beginning of a betrayal I never saw coming, and a revenge story she'd never forget. After that night when she ignored my text, I tried to convince myself that it was just a misunderstanding. Emily had this incredible ability to slip right back into the role of the perfect girlfriend. She'd show up with that disarming smile, her arms wrapping around me like I was her safe place, and all my doubts would melt away. She said all the right things, in all the right ways, and I fell for it every single time. She kept telling me she believed in me. "You're the kind of guy who's going to make it big. I just know it," she'd say, and those words were like gasoline to my empty engine. I wanted to be that guy she described. I wanted to prove her right. Every time I felt like I was slipping, she'd somehow know how to reel me back in with a compliment, a soft touch, or a little kiss that made me think she truly cared. But looking back, I realized she was simply giving me just enough to keep me hooked, just enough so I'd keep giving. Slowly, I began to notice that most of our conversations were about her wants and dreams. Emily loved to talk about luxury restaurants, beach vacations, and new designer clothes. Whenever I mentioned that my finances were tight, she'd brush it off with a sweet laugh, saying things like, "Oh, don't worry, babe. It's just a dream for now." Funny how those dreams always turned into real plans that somehow ended up on my credit card. One evening, she saw an ad for a trendy new restaurant that had just opened downtown. "We have to go there. It'll be so romantic." "You know I love experiences like that," she said, her eyes lighting up like a kid on Christmas. I hesitated, trying to explain that my job situation was still shaky and I needed to save every dollar. She tilted her head, pouted just slightly, and whispered, "Oh, come on, life's too short to say no to a little happiness, right?" And there I was, booking a reservation at a place where one dinner cost more than my week's groceries. Watching her smile across the table that night, snapping pictures of her food for Instagram, thanking me like I was some sort of hero, it made me feel like maybe it was worth it. But a voice in my head was already asking, is this love, or am I just a wallet with a heartbeat? Over time, the favors grew bigger. Emily wanted to refresh her wardrobe, and since she was too busy, she dragged me into stores to help her shop. Somehow, I always ended up at the register, swiping my card. I told myself it was fine. This was what boyfriends did. But deep down, I felt the pressure building. Emily knew exactly how to manipulate my pride. She'd say things like, "You know, I'm so lucky to have a man who can take care of me. Not all guys are like you." That line worked like magic every time. I'd push myself harder, even when my bank account screamed otherwise, just to live up to this image she painted. What bothered me most, though, was how she avoided any talk of the future. I'd ask, "Do you see us together long-term? Where do you think this is going?" And she'd just smile and say, "Babe, why worry about the future? Let's just live in the moment. Isn't that better?" At first, it sounded romantic. But over time, I started to wonder if she ever saw me in her future at all. One night, as we walked through the city, I told her about my plan to move closer to downtown if I landed a better job. She nodded, but then said, "That's nice, but you know what I've been dreaming of? A trip to the Maldives. Can you imagine? White sand, cocktails, beach photos. Maybe we could start saving for it together?" I froze. I couldn't even afford a weekend road trip, let alone an exotic island getaway. But instead of saying no, I just smiled and nodded like a fool. The truth hit me when I realized she never really asked about my struggles. One day I told her I was late on a credit card payment, and she just shrugged. "Don't stress over small stuff. It'll work out. By the way, did you see that new store opening?" That night, lying awake, I went over every conversation in my head. I started to see the pattern. Emily wasn't building something with me. She was draining me. I was the one keeping her lifestyle alive while mine was falling apart. And then something shifted. I decided to stop ignoring the red flags. Because sooner or later, I knew I'd either break or I'd fight back. The moment I decided to really pay attention to the signs, everything started falling into place, like pieces of a puzzle I didn't want to complete. Emily had always been busy with work, friends, and her mysterious girls' nights, but I realized I knew almost nothing about where she went or who she was with. Whenever I asked, she'd get defensive or laugh it off. "Babe, do you really not trust me? You know I'm just with my friends. Don't be that guy." The guilt trip worked at first, but I couldn't ignore the feeling in my gut anymore. Something wasn't right. One Friday evening, we had plans to cook dinner together at my place. I bought everything: her favorite wine, a nice steak, even those overpriced candles she liked. 10 minutes before she was supposed to arrive, she texted, "So sorry, babe. My friend is having a rough night. Girls' night emergency. Rain check?" My first instinct was to believe her. But while scrolling through Instagram later that night, I saw her post a story, dressed to kill, makeup flawless, holding a cocktail in some upscale lounge. And the tag? A guy's username I didn't recognize. I felt that sharp twist in my stomach, the kind that makes your blood run cold. I told myself it could be nothing. Maybe a friend? Maybe a cousin? But the photo didn't scream casual night out. It screamed date. The next day, I decided to do something I never thought I'd do. I started paying attention to every detail. I noticed how she'd leave her phone face down on the table when we were together. How she'd suddenly excuse herself to the bathroom to answer work messages late at night. How her so-called girls' trips always coincided with weekends she refused to spend with me. Then came the breaking point. One night, while she was in the shower at my apartment, her phone buzzed on the counter. I didn't plan to snoop, at least, not at first, but the message lit up her screen. It was from the same guy I'd seen tagged in her post. It read, "Last night was amazing. Can't wait for this weekend." I froze. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely breathe. It wasn't just suspicion anymore. It was proof, raw, undeniable proof. When she came out of the bathroom, I tried to play it cool, but my hands were shaking. She kissed me, smiled like nothing happened, and I remember thinking, how can someone lie so easily? How can someone kiss you while texting another guy about last night? That night, I didn't sleep. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of our relationship. Every "I love you." Every sweet gesture suddenly felt fake, like scenes from a movie she was directing. The next morning, I made a decision. I wouldn't confront her. Not yet. Why? Because I wanted the truth, not just a confrontation she could wiggle out of with lies and fake tears. Emily was clever, and I knew that if I accused her without solid evidence, she'd twist it around and make me look crazy. I'd seen her do it to her friends when she talked behind their backs. So, I started my own investigation. I saved the screenshot of that message from her phone. I began paying attention to her social media posts, checking timestamps, and noticing how her stories didn't always match where she claimed to be. I even started recording our conversations, just in case she slipped up and said something that didn't add up. The more I looked, the more I found. She wasn't just texting one guy. There were others, flirty comments, late night, likes, and posts from places she swore she'd never been. Every discovery felt like another stab in the back, but it also fueled something inside me. Anger, determination, a quiet fire that whispered, she thinks she can play me? She has no idea who she's dealing with. By the end of that week, I knew one thing for sure. Emily wasn't just going to get caught. She was going to regret ever thinking she could use me. After seeing that message on her phone, I realized something very clearly. If I was going to confront Emily, I needed to be prepared. She was too good at twisting stories, too skilled at playing the victim. I couldn't just storm in with a single text screenshot. She'd laugh, cry, and make me look like the crazy one. No, I needed undeniable proof, something that would leave her no room to escape. So I started watching quietly. The first step was her social media. Emily loved to post everything online, selfies at fancy places, brunch photos, little videos with friends. At first glance, there was nothing suspicious, but when I began comparing her posts with the stories she told me, cracks started to appear. For example, one weekend she said she was helping her friend move apartments, but I found a picture of her at a rooftop bar, dressed like she was on a date. I began screenshotting everything, photos, comments from random guys, even timestamps of her posts. I built a folder on my computer labeled work, just in case she ever snooped around my laptop. It wasn't just about catching her. It was about building a timeline of lies. The second step was communication. I paid attention to how often she was on her phone when we were together. I noticed she'd always smile at texts but never tell me who they were from. So one day, I tested something. I casually asked, "Who's making you smile so much?" She laughed nervously. "Oh, just my friend Megan. You know, girl stuff." But I'd already seen the screen flash with a male name just seconds before. I knew I needed more. So I got creative. I borrowed an old phone from a friend and created a fake Instagram account, someone Emily wouldn't recognize. I followed her and started watching her activity, especially her tagged photos. That's when I found a gold mine. A guy named Ryan had been tagging her in posts, always from expensive restaurants and late-night events. She never mentioned Ryan to me. Not once. Curious, I clicked through Ryan's profile. There they were, pictures of Emily smiling next to him, wine glasses in hand, her head resting on his shoulder in one shot. My blood boiled, but I kept scrolling. I needed to stay calm and focused. There were even comments from her like, "Last night was perfect," under his posts. It was all the proof I needed, but I wasn't done yet. I decided to take it further. I downloaded an app that allowed me to record calls discreetly. Whenever Emily called me, I saved the conversations, listening carefully for inconsistencies. Sure enough, she slipped up a few times, claiming to be at home, when I could clearly hear background noise from a bar or a crowded place. The final step was to make her trust me even more. I knew that if I started pulling away too soon, she'd get suspicious and start hiding her tracks better. So I played along. I acted as if everything was perfect, showering her with attention, being the sweet boyfriend. If she suspected anything, my plan would fall apart. But inside, I was burning. Every time she smiled at me, every time she called me babe, I imagined the lies behind those eyes. There was one particular night that solidified my plan. Emily told me she was going on another girls' trip, a weekend getaway with her best friend. Something about her tone felt rehearsed, too polished. I offered to drop her off at the airport, but she declined, saying her friend was picking her up. That was my chance. I followed her that Friday evening, keeping my distance. She didn't go to the airport. She didn't even go near a friend's house. She drove straight to a downtown hotel, where Ryan was waiting for her in the lobby. I parked across the street, heart pounding, and took photos. Photo after photo, I captured every moment. Her walking in with him, their hands touching, their smiles. That night, I didn't confront her. I didn't call, I didn't text. I let her think I was at home like always, the clueless boyfriend waiting for her to come back. But I knew something she didn't. I had everything I needed to end this on my terms. And I wasn't just going to expose her. I was going to make sure she'd regret ever thinking she could play me. The night I saw Emily walking into that hotel with Ryan, something inside me shifted. The hurt was still there, but it was no longer just pain. It was focus. If Emily wanted to treat me like I was blind and stupid, fine. I would let her keep thinking that, while I carefully set the stage for the endgame. Confronting her right away would have been satisfying for about 10 seconds. I'd yell, she'd cry, maybe deny everything, and then somehow flip the script to make me feel like the bad guy. No, I needed something smarter. Something that would not just expose her, but make her regret every single lie she ever told me. I spent that weekend working on my plan. It started with making sure I had all the evidence organized, screenshots of texts, her Instagram photos with Ryan, recordings of conversations where she contradicted herself, and, of course, the hotel photos. I even created a hidden folder on a USB drive, just in case I needed to show anyone else the truth. I wasn't just going to tell her I knew. When the time came, I'd make her choke on the evidence. The second step was psychological. Emily had always counted on me being predictable, generous, forgiving, and maybe a little too soft-hearted. That was my greatest weapon. I would act like the perfect boyfriend, just as she expected. I'd give her no reason to suspect anything. Meanwhile, I'd slowly start taking back control of the narrative. So I played along. The next time I saw her, she hugged me like nothing happened, and I hugged her back with a smile that hid my rage. She talked about her girls' trip and how relaxing it was. I nodded and pretended to believe every word. Inside, I was laughing. Keep talking, Emily. Dig your own grave. Over the next few days, I started setting traps. When she asked me for money to help pay for a friend's birthday dinner, I said I'd cover it, but only after she sent me a list of what she planned to buy. She hesitated but went along with it. I kept every receipt, every request she made, as more proof of how she used me. I also started subtly planting questions. Things like, "So who's Ryan? I think I saw someone tag you in a photo." She froze for half a second, then laughed. "Oh, just a friend of Megan's. He's harmless." I smiled and nodded, as if I was satisfied with that answer. But inside, I marked another lie. What Emily didn't realize was that I'd already connected with some of her friends on social media. Not her close friends, the ones she used as alibis, but acquaintances. A few of them liked my posts and casually mentioned things about Emily that didn't match her stories. One girl even joked in the comments, "Emily and her mystery guy at the wine bar again?" That was all I needed to confirm what I already knew. The third step of my plan was patience. I couldn't rush this. I wanted Emily to feel completely safe before I pulled the rug out from under her. So, I kept treating her the way she expected, taking her out to dinner, listening to her complaints about work, even pretending to care about her dream trip to the Maldives. Every moment I spent with her, I imagined how sweet it would be when the tables turned. I started withdrawing emotionally, though not in a way she could notice. I stopped answering her calls right away, claiming I was busy with job interviews or freelance projects. When she asked for favors, I'd take just a bit longer to respond. It wasn't enough to make her suspicious, just enough for her to feel a little insecure. By the end of that week, I had the first stage of my revenge plan fully in place. I would let Emily hang herself with her lies. I'd keep gathering evidence, smiling and nodding, all while preparing a final showdown that would leave her reputation in ruins. What Emily didn't know was that I was no longer her naive backup plan. I was about to become her worst nightmare. The hardest part of my plan was pretending nothing was wrong. Every time I looked at Emily, I had to remind myself to keep smiling, to keep acting like the same lovesick guy she thought she could manipulate. Inside, I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw her lies back in her face, but I knew the timing wasn't right. I needed her guard down, completely, before I struck. So I played the fool. When she came over that week, she greeted me with a bright smile and a kiss on the cheek, like nothing had happened. "Miss me?" she teased. I forced a laugh and replied, "Always," even though every second with her now felt like walking on broken glass. I pretended to hang on her every word, nodding as she talked about her girls' night and how exhausting it was. It took every ounce of self-control not to roll my eyes. The next time she asked me for money, I didn't hesitate. "Sure, babe," I said with a warm grin. I wanted her to think I was still the same naive guy, the one who would do anything for her. But now, I kept a detailed record of every favor, every dollar I spent, as ammunition for later. Each little "thank you" from her only fueled my determination. I also started testing her lies. One evening, I casually mentioned, "I was in town the other day and saw a guy who looked just like Ryan. Do you know anyone by that name?" She paused for just a fraction of a second, barely noticeable, before answering, "Ryan? Oh, no, I don't think so. Maybe one of Megan's friends?" "Why?" I shrugged and let it go, as if I wasn't suspicious at all. Meanwhile, I was building my trap. I knew Emily loved attention and showing off her perfect life online. So I started planting subtle hints on social media that I was busy, happy, and maybe even less available. I posted photos of myself at the gym, hanging out with friends, and even casually mentioning in captions that I was working on a new project. I wanted her to feel like I was slipping away, just a little. I could see the effect immediately. She started texting me more often, asking where I was, what I was doing, and who I was with. It was almost funny. One night, she called me while I was out with friends, her tone overly sweet. "I miss you," she said. "When are we having a night just for us?" "Soon," I replied. "I'm just slammed with stuff this week." I could almost hear the irritation behind her smile. She wasn't used to me being unavailable, and it was starting to bother her. At the same time, I was preparing for the big move. I gathered every piece of evidence, screenshots, recordings, and photos, and organized them into a single file. I even printed some of the photos of her with Ryan. I wanted something tangible, something she couldn't deny or delete. But I wasn't just planning to confront her privately. No, I wanted her lies to be exposed in a way that would shake her world. I started reaching out to people she cared about, her friends, even her cousin who often commented on her posts. Not directly, of course. I just started liking and commenting on their content, getting on their radar. I wanted them to notice me, because when the time came, they'd see the truth, too. Then came the perfect opportunity. Emily told me she wanted to have a special night with me after her next weekend trip. She promised she'd make up for being so busy lately. I smiled, pretending to be thrilled, but inside I knew this was it. I offered to help fund her trip, even adding a bit more for spa expenses. She lit up, kissed me, and said I was the sweetest guy in the world. Meanwhile, I knew exactly what she was doing that weekend, and I planned to have one last piece of proof to seal her fate. I hired a friend, a photographer who owed me a favor, to keep an eye on that hotel. Ryan's hotel. My friend didn't disappoint. By Sunday, I had high-resolution photos of Emily and Ryan together, hugging and laughing, walking hand in hand into the lobby. When she came back, I didn't confront her. I acted like the same old guy. "Did you have fun?" I asked, smiling. "You look amazing." She grinned and said, "It was just what I needed, babe. A little girl time to recharge." "Girl time?" "Sure." I nodded, kissed her on the forehead, and thought, "Enjoy this while you can, Emily. Your perfect little game is about to end." The moment I decided to pull back from Emily, the dynamic between us started to shift. She didn't notice it right away. Why would she? She was used to me always being there, always answering, always giving. But I began changing the script, and little by little, she started to feel it. It started with something simple: time. I stopped being available at her every call or text. When she sent me those "babe, I miss you" messages, I wouldn't respond within seconds like before. Sometimes I'd wait an hour or two, claiming I was busy with job interviews or helping a friend. It was subtle, but I could sense her unease. The first time I skipped one of our usual Friday dinners, she called me 3 times in a row. "Everything okay?" she asked, her voice trying to sound casual but with a hint of worry. "Yeah," I said calmly. "Just tired. Think I'll stay in tonight." There was a pause on the other end. She wasn't used to rejection, not from me. "Oh, okay. I guess I'll see you tomorrow." "Maybe," I replied, keeping my tone light. "I'll let you know." For the first time since we'd been together, she was the one chasing me. I also started cutting back financially. When she hinted about wanting to go out for an expensive dinner, I'd smile and say, "You know, I'm trying to save for something big. Maybe we can order takeout instead?" At first, she laughed it off, but the second time I said no, I saw a flash of irritation in her eyes. She was used to me being her personal ATM. I could feel her getting nervous. She started being overly affectionate, sending flirty texts, showing up at my apartment with my favorite snacks, and even cooking for me, something she rarely did. It was almost funny watching her try to reel me back in. But I wasn't biting. Instead, I kept feeding her lies, just like she fed me hers. "I'm swamped with work this week. I might have to go out of town for a project. I'll call you later. I'm in a meeting." I wanted her to feel the uncertainty, the way I had felt every time she disappeared on a girl's trip. At the same time, I kept gathering more evidence. I had everything I needed, but I wanted to see how far she'd go. One night, I casually mentioned, "I ran into someone who said they saw you at the rooftop bar last weekend." Her eyes widened just slightly before she laughed and said, "Oh, they must be mistaken. I was with Megan, you know that." I nodded, pretending to believe her, while inside I was smiling. The more I pulled back, the more desperate she became. She started inviting me over to her place more often, dressing up, putting on the kind of charm that had worked on me at the beginning. "We don't spend enough time together," she said one night, her voice sweet but slightly anxious. "Yeah, I've been busy," I replied, keeping my tone distant. "Busy with what?" she pressed. "Just stuff," I said casually. "Trying to get my life together." I could see the panic flicker in her eyes. Emily wasn't used to losing control. Then came the moment that told me my plan was working. One Saturday evening, she showed up at my door unannounced. Her makeup was perfect, and she wore a dress I'd never seen before, probably bought with the money I gave her. "I just missed you," she said softly. I smiled, but this time I didn't invite her in right away. "Oh, I was just heading out," I lied. "But maybe tomorrow?" Her face fell, just slightly, before she masked it with another sweet smile. "Sure, tomorrow." As I closed the door behind me, I knew the tables had turned. For the first time, Emily was the one feeling insecure, uncertain, and a little afraid of losing me. And I wasn't done yet. I had the proof. I had her attention. And now, I was going to let her feel the same emotional chaos she had put me through, until the moment I ended it for good. By the time I reached the 8th stage of my plan, Emily was already on edge. She could sense that something had shifted, though she couldn't put her finger on what. I wasn't the desperate, lovesick guy she was used to. I had become quieter, more observant. And the more she tried to act like everything was fine, the more I realized the end was near. I decided it was time to start cracking her perfect facade. Not fully, just enough to watch her squirm. One evening, I invited her over for dinner. I kept things casual, no wine, no fancy food, just takeout and a movie. We sat on the couch, and I casually said, "So, Megan told me she didn't see you last weekend. Weird, right? Didn't you say you were with her?" The look on her face was priceless. She froze for a split second, then quickly forced a laugh. "Oh, Megan must have forgotten. You know how scatterbrained she is." She waved her hand like it was nothing, but I could see her nervousness. I didn't press further. I just smiled and nodded, acting as if I believed her. But that moment planted a seed of fear in her. Over the next few days, I continued dropping small hints. You know, I keep hearing your name from random people, I said once, with a half smile. Seems like you've been really busy. Her face tightened, and she changed the subject immediately. I let her. I wanted her to think she still had control, right before I yanked it away. Meanwhile, I was preparing the big reveal. I created a private folder on my phone with all the evidence, screenshots, voice recordings, and the photos of her with Ryan. I even added a few notes with dates and times, outlining her lies. If she tried to deny anything, I'd have every detail ready. Then I took it one step further. I made plans for a romantic dinner at my place the following weekend. I told her I wanted to do something special for us, and she was thrilled. "Ah, babe, that's so sweet. I knew you'd come around," she said, her voice full of relief. I smiled, but inside I was laughing. That week, I kept pulling back more and more. I stopped initiating conversations and started giving her vague answers. "How's your day?" she'd ask. "Busy," I'd say flatly. "Doing what?" "Stuff. Don't worry about it." She hated that. She was used to me pouring my heart out, and now she felt like I was slipping away. One night, she even accused me of losing interest. I looked her dead in the eye and said, "Maybe I'm just starting to see things for what they are." That line shook her. I could see it in her eyes, the sudden panic, the realization that maybe, just maybe, she was losing her grip on me. By Friday, the tension between us was palpable. She kept texting me all day. "Can't wait for tomorrow night. What should I wear? You've been so quiet lately. We're good, right?" I played it cool. "Yeah, we're good," I texted back. "Tomorrow will be special. Promise." What she didn't know was that I had something planned for that dinner, something that would expose her for the liar she truly was. I'd set the table, cook the meal, and then show her everything. No yelling, no drama, just the cold, hard truth laid out like a deck of cards she could no longer hide. I couldn't wait to see her face when she realized the game was over. The night of the romantic dinner had finally arrived. I had planned every single detail, not to impress Emily, but to make sure she'd have no way to escape the truth. The table was set, the lights were low, and soft music played in the background. From the outside, it looked like a perfect date. But I knew this night would be the one she'd never forget. Emily arrived wearing a sleek black dress, her hair perfectly styled, and that fake smile plastered on her face. "Wow, babe," she said as she walked in, looking around. "This is beautiful. You didn't have to go all out for me." "Oh, I wanted to," I replied smoothly. "Tonight is special." We sat down, and I played my role perfectly. I poured her a glass of wine, made small talk, and even complimented her. For the first half hour, she was glowing, thinking she still had me wrapped around her finger. I almost felt sorry for her, almost. Then, halfway through dinner, I leaned back in my chair and smiled. "You know, Emily," I said casually, "it's funny how life works. You think you know someone, and then you find out who they really are." She laughed lightly, a bit confused. "What do you mean?" I pulled out my phone and opened the folder I had prepared. "I mean this," I said, sliding the screen across the table. The first photo was of her and Ryan, arms around each other, smiling at the hotel lobby. Her face went pale instantly. What is this?" she stammered, trying to laugh it off. "You tell me," I said coldly. "Because if this is part of your girl's trip, I'd love to meet your new girlfriend named Ryan." She froze, completely silent. I swiped through the next few photos, screenshots of texts, flirty comments, and the rooftop bar pictures. Every image cut through the fake composure she tried to maintain. These aren't what they look like," she mumbled. "Really?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "So, when Ryan texted you last night was amazing. I'm supposed to believe you were just what? Playing board games?" Her hands shook as she tried to grab my phone, but I pulled it back. "Oh no, Emily. You don't get to touch this. I've got everything saved, on the cloud, on my laptop, on a USB. Every single lie you told me, documented." She started crying, the crocodile tears I'd seen before. "Please, babe, I can explain. It's not what you think. I made a mistake." "A mistake?" I laughed. "Multiple weekends, multiple lies, multiple guys? That's not a mistake, Emily. That's who you are." I stood up, grabbed the folder I had printed with all the evidence, and dropped it on the table. "Here, a little gift, in case you want to remember how badly you screwed up." She looked at me like a deer caught in headlights. You're not going to tell anyone, right? We can work this out." "Oh, I'm going to tell everyone, I said with a cold smile. Your friends, your family, even Ryan. They all deserve to know who you really are. Emily panicked. Please don't. I'll do anything. Too late. I cut her off. You had every chance. You thought I was too stupid to see through you. You thought I'd never fight back. Well, here's the thing. Tonight, you get to feel what it's like to be exposed. I stood there for a moment, watching her crumble. Then I walked over to the door, holding it open. Dinner's over. Goodbye, Emily. She sat frozen for a moment, her eyes wide and face pale. You'll regret this, she whispered. No, I said calmly. You will. As the door closed behind her, I felt something I hadn't felt in months, freedom. But this wasn't the end. Oh no. The real finale would come when everyone else learned the truth about her perfect little act. After Emily walked out that night, the silence in my apartment felt different. It wasn't heavy or suffocating anymore. It was peaceful. For the first time in months, I wasn't weighed down by her lies or manipulation. I poured myself a drink, sat back on the couch, and smiled. The game was over, and I had won. But I wasn't finished just yet. The next morning, I sent a few carefully crafted messages to the people who deserved to know the truth. I forwarded some of the screenshots and photos to her closest friends and even Ryan. My message was simple. I thought you all should know who she really is. I didn't add any bitterness or insults, just the evidence. Let the truth speak for itself. By the afternoon, my phone was blowing up with messages from mutual acquaintances. Most of them were shocked, some even apologizing for not seeing it sooner. A few of her friends told me she had gone silent in their group chats, too embarrassed to explain herself. I didn't feel bad, not even a little. When Ryan replied, he was furious, not at me, but at her. He had no idea she was in a relationship. Thanks for telling me, man, he texted. Guess I dodged a bullet. I couldn't help but laugh. Emily's web of lies had finally unraveled, and there was no one left to defend her. After that, I blocked her number and unfollowed her on every social platform. I didn't want her excuses, her fake apologies, or her desperate attempts to crawl back into my life. She had made her choices, and now she could live with the consequences. Instead of dwelling on her betrayal, I focused on myself. I updated my resume, applied for better jobs, and within weeks, I landed a position that paid better than my last one. I started hitting the gym again, not out of spite, but because I wanted to feel good about myself. Every day, I felt a little stronger, a little more like the man I used to be, before Emily tried to tear me down. It's funny how life works. Emily thought she was using me, but in a twisted way, she pushed me to grow. I learned more about self-respect and boundaries in those few months than I had in years. I learned that love isn't about constant sacrifice or being someone's backup plan. It's about mutual respect and trust. A few weeks later, I heard from one of Emily's former friends that she had tried to contact me. She's saying she messed up and wants to make things right, the friend said. I just laughed. There was no making things right after everything she did. Now, when I think about Emily, I don't feel anger or sadness. I feel nothing. She's just a chapter 1 closed, a painful one, but one that taught me the kind of man I refuse to be ever again. Life has been better without her. I spend my weekends with real friends. I'm saving money instead of wasting it on someone unworthy. And I'm even talking to someone new. Someone who actually listens, who actually cares. It's refreshing to know that not everyone is like Emily. If there's one thing I'd say to anyone who's ever been in my shoes, it's this. Don't be afraid to walk away. The moment I stopped letting Emily control me, my entire life changed. And standing here now, stronger and happier than I've ever been, I can honestly say, I don't regret a single step of my revenge. Because it wasn't just about exposing her. It was about reclaiming myself. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. Did he do the right thing?